with utility costs as such. It is not a part of the program that was introduced by the governor, and it has been injected by another public official. The Education Trust Fund by removing the sales tax on utilities. We're very much concerned about this, and we see this move as an immediate threat to the promise that was made by Governor Wallace. We feel that that promise will probably be financially impossible should the legislature see fit to take the action recommended recently by one public official. We would also suggest to you that students shouldn't have to bear the high utility cost in Alabama. It seems that in the past we've always looked to the students to bear the cost of things such as this, and we're suggesting that this is inappropriate to have to bear the brunt of lowering utilities. Actually, this has nothing to do. Last week at the annual AEA convention, Governor Wallace recommended the abolition of school fees. This, of course, would result in immediate savings to students.
Now, such a committee was, I believe, formed by executive order in 1971. And if you look at the makeup and composure of it, you'll find that it is stacked almost totally with people from the utility world. There's no check and balance. You'll find the work that they've done so far that you could put in a cigar box. And again, I feel like this is one area that we need to work together and improve in. And by doing this, then everybody is involved in the input, and they're well aware of what the output will be. But the way it is today, we are isolated. We find Alabama Power and ADO working together, the governor talking about industrial advancement, and every bit of this concerns what we do over here on rate cases.
It seems right strange to me that the educators would come over and oppose rate increases and at the same time have their hand out behind to get the 4 cents on every dollar that we gave a utility. And as you know, this particular tax is on all the utilities. I did not bother it on the telephones because I think you have a choice of the type of telephone service that you'd like to have. Nor did I bother it on the water companies. All I wanted was relief for our senior citizens, our young people who are living in mobile homes, on our universities, and on those who are on low incomes and the ones who absolutely cannot afford to pay their utility bills. And when we say utility bills, we're really talking about tax and utility bills, because you would have to divide your utility bill in half to really get the amount that you were paying for your power, as in the case of the Alabama Power Company. The other half of it goes directly back in the coffers of the state taxes.
Well, the hearing today, as far as we're concerned, has covered a lot of ground that we think is very important, including the fact that our load projections have proven out over the years to be correct, and that without the construction that has taken place, there would be a shortage of energy in Alabama. We think that the matters of the need for energy, the fact that you can't have successful regulation without recognizing the state's needs and the ability of the utility to supply energy. These are things that I think are quite important to focus on, and I think it's been very helpful today.
Incidentally, to show you to illustrate the impact of this fuel clause, In 1970, one major utility passed on in increased rates over $1 million under the fuel clause. In 1971, over $8 million under the fuel clause. In 1972, almost $21 million under the fuel clause. In 1973, over $36 million under the fuel clause. And the amount passed on in this year will be in excess of $100 million per year under the fuel clause, based on an $18 per ton of coal with an 8.8% energy loss. That gives you a brief summary of the economic impact of the fuel clause. We spent on new construction last year almost as much as our entire gross income, that's without reference to any expenses, gross income, which means that we have to raise the money for new construction out of new security holders, not old security holders. They've already invested their money. It's the new ones who haven't invested that we're primarily concerned with when we talk to you about problems with financing. Section 53 is the proceeding under which you start rate cases. And I find it highly unlikely, as a practical matter, particularly with a People's Council that would be provided under one of these other bills, that the Commission would find it possible to permit a fuel adjustment monthly to go into effect in a period of rising prices such as we've experienced in the last 15 months without a hearing. And that hearing is a rate case, a full rate case. You can't file a full rate case and be prepared on it if you don't know whether the Commission is going to have one or not until after you've filed. And if you aren't ready, 6 months is a minimum time to turn all the troops out to get ready to try a rate case. Last year, fuel costs rose steadily all during the year. I see nothing in today's news. The King of Saudi Arabia assassinated. Mr. Kissinger returns unsuccessful from the Middle East with his mission, and the strip mining bill in the House and Senate in Washington about to pass. I'm not optimistic about fuel costs in the long run going any way but up.
For instance, if a person is convicted of driving while intoxicated, he can apply for a license on an occupational basis just to go to and from work. I find in my past position as a solicitor that juries are hesitant to convict people of driving while intoxicated if they are involved in an occupation such as a truck driver, which requires a license to earn a living. I believe under this bill we can get more convictions, number one, and secondly, I believe it will be fair for the person to have a license to go to and from work. Now, I might add that under this bill, if you are granted an occupational license and you are found guilty of another traffic offense during your time period under which you're under probation, then you automatically lose your license and your time for loss is doubled.
in this year, 1975, we do have a surplus so-called in the Educational Trust Fund, and a $14 million surplus, I believe, in the so-called General Fund, which, as in most states, happens to be inflationary with very little growth, not only in Alabama, but in every other state in the Union. And therefore, in doing the main item that a governor, that is duty that he performs, in submitting the budget to you, which must be balanced, I must take into consideration, of course, the law of the state, which says that I must submit a balanced budget, one in keeping with the income of our state. Otherwise, we would have proration. And I know that you who have experienced proration a few years ago never want to have that experience again. To you and to Mr. Speaker, Joe McCorkadale, and members of the Legislative Assembly and joint session, it's a great pleasure to be back again. That's all.
It may possibly cost more money in terms of the number of actual dollars expended, but in terms of efficiency or in terms of dollar value, it's my opinion that it will save money.
How will the council go on this proposal?
Well, of course, I couldn't speak for the council. I'm only speaking as an individual member of the council, and in fact, I'm not even prepared to say at this moment exactly how I will go. All I'm saying is that it looks good to me thus far. We're still looking at it.
Do you expect to have a final vote on the proposal Tuesday night?
I don't see any particular reason from my own point of view why we couldn't, but I, again, can't say that it will be definitely approved next Tuesday night.
I just heard Senator Wilson speak to the Finance and Taxation Committee, and I'd like to echo the remarks that he made, that a lot of times when these bills come out here on the floor, then we're acting in haste and ignorance. And so I for one, would like to ask the Rules Committee that they not put these budget bills on the calendar for this week. And this week that we go ahead and try to pass legislation, certainly legislation that is not of great controversy.
Senator Flippo, the State Highway Director, has asked for additional money other than that was already in the budget. This is going to change things when the Senate looks at the budget. Just how much of an effect will it have?
Well, I think it will have a great deal of effect. I know that I'm interested, and I know the other senators and everyone, in fact, is interested in maintaining high levels of employment to the extent that we don't want people laid off in this recessionary period that we're in. I was operating under the impression that the $27 million requested in the governor's budget would be sufficient to maintain current levels of employment. If I understood the highway director last night correctly, he stated that in order to maintain current levels of employment that he would need $35 million as opposed to $27 million, which is a new $8 million factor introduced into the needs of the highway department, and I know I certainly want to meet those needs if we possibly can in any way, and our current dilemma is how to come up with an additional $8 million for the highway department. I don't know, I certainly don't have any proposal as to how we could come up with that $8 million between now and Thursday, and I wouldn't know where we could get it at some later date. So it is a new factor, and I was simply calling attention to the members of the Senate that we do have a new $8 million factor involved in it.
Well, primarily they prevent flipping, they regulate the insurance, prevent the discounting of insurance premiums, those type things that could be done to accelerate the interest. The interest under this bill as it presently stands is just unconscionable. It's just too high. And the industry that is proposed to be regulated wrote the bill, and they say that those of us who are proponents of
some amendments don't have the right to amend it. They ought to be able to get it just like they want it, and I personally don't feel that's the way it ought to be. I think the people in the state of Alabama understand my position. I'm sorry I have to filibuster. I haven't participated in that many, but on an issue of this importance, I'm going to continue to fight it.
In one of your amendments, you talk about flipping. Could you give me a definition of flipping?
That's just the renewal of a loan before it becomes due, and it accelerates the interest because every time you renew it, under the refund provision of this bill, you've already collected. Say if you pay 3 months on it, the lender has already collected about 42% of his interest over a 12-month period of time under the rule of 78. So every time he renews it every 3 months, he's gotten 42% of his interest in that 3-month period of time that he would get over a year's period of time. You multiply that by 4, and he's accumulated, well, almost 4 times the amount of interest that he would accumulate in a year under a normal procedure.
The head of my family. Here today to pay tribute to me. The tribute really belongs to all the people in Elba who helped to shape and to develop whatever characteristics I have that have earned me this honor you do me here today. I thank you, and I love you very much.
Well, of course, as you know, the bill originally started off to remove those officials from Montgomery County from the fee system who are on the fee system, those being the circuit clerk, the tax assessor, and the tax collector. However, the bill was changed and substituted, and it was substituted in such a way as to grant broad salary increases to other elected county officials to the tune of approximately $86,000. Now, there was never any indication as to whether or not the county could afford this extra bite out of its general fund, and I am opposing the bill at this time because I have no assurance that the county can afford this extra money, and I would like to be able to gather a few more facts to determine whether or not they can afford it. I think it would be irresponsible to pass legislation without knowing whether or not the county could afford the bill.
What about
The sponsor of the bill will not be mentioned in the bill coming before the Alabama legislature. We feel that the question of true democracy is at stake here, and that we hear voices from throughout this country saying, let the people decide. And this is the only voice that we hear saying that the people will not have the opportunity to decide. This matter of denying people the right to govern themselves is not in keeping with the democratic process. And this is what is proposed for Macon County.
Do you have any personal interest in the setup of the Wages Commission?
In the bill that will come before the Alabama legislature, the name Thomas Reed will not be mentioned at all.
What we ought to do is
members of the House, this is the 18-year-old bill. I was hopeful that there wouldn't be too much debate after he gets to be 18. So this amendment, I'm sure that this is really the intent of the sponsor of the bill anyway. I don't think he wants to meaning of the bill at all. It puts in the Youthful Offender Act.
The bill as substitute. All in favor, vote aye. Vote opposed, no. Clerk and Lodge, proceed, members will vote.
Ron, let me not correct you, but add a little something to what you said. You said the unpopular bill. I'm not sure, based on the reaction that we've had from the governor's reallocation bill, that it's that unpopular. I'm convinced that the governor and his staff did a very thorough job of seeking to find funds in this state for your Medicaid program, your prison program, your old age pension home, and a drastic highway program that we've got to do something about. And after this search, we found that, the governor found that the general fund was in essence broke, but the Special Education Trust Fund was overrun with a $101 million surplus. These monies will not be spent on the governor's budget in the next biennium. And therefore his position and, as you say, perhaps my task, is to try to see if we can't come up with some funds for the various programs that I enumerated. And the logical place to look, if you got one pocket full of money and the other one empty, the logical place to look for more money is in the pocket that's full.
We are not going to let you buy. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move to lay the amendment on the table. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Kenyon would like to speak to the amendment.
The gentleman withhold his motion to table.